Hi boys and girls, welcome back to art. I know we kind of have a theme going on right now with our food art because we were looking at the artist Wayne Thiebaud, but we're going to continue. We're going to use make ice cream cones today and use paint. But if you don't have paint at home, then you can use markers, you can use crayons, you can use watercolors, and just try to do the best you can completing your art project and creating ice cream cones. So if you don't have paper at home, you can always send me an email and say that you need some of it, and I will put it at the front office. I'm going to show you how to draw your cones first, and then we will watch how to actually paint them so that we can begin our art project. So the first thing I want you to do, this is a paper that is half a sheet of my regular paper. It is 12 inches long and it's 6 inches wide. So I cut this, and like I said, I will have extras if you need them. So the first thing I need to create so that my ice cream scoops are actually overlapping because they're sitting on top of each other is I'm going to actually create the top ice cream scoop first and then create the ones underneath so that I have this shape that's overlapping. So my first line I'm going to draw is a big curved line right here, like a rainbow. So if you look at it, I'm just going to have this line right here, but I also want to make sure that I do it as close to the top of my paper as possible so that I have room at the bottom to create my other scoops and my cone. So I'm going to take and I'm going to use a pencil to draw this, boys and girls. I also want to make sure I put my name on my paper, and I put my grade level, and this is my second and third grader, so I'm going to write 2, and I'm going to write my teacher's name. And you can even just write the first letter. So if it's Miss Esquivel, I'm going to write a capital E, so 2E, so I know that it belongs to second grade, Esquivel. Then I'm going to flip it over. And on this paper, I'm going to draw my big curved line, like a rainbow line, right in the middle of my paper at the top. Notice I only have a little bit of room left. Now, if you're wanting to put a cherry or something on top, you might want to leave a little bit more room. I'm not going to be putting a cherry on top of my ice cream, but that you may do that and add more details if you'd like. So the next thing I'm going to draw is I need to do this little ruffle line right here where the scoop is actually come out of the bottom. And so I'm going to make a curved line right here, almost like a letter C, but another curved line. This is where I say that art is just lines that are coming together to create your masterpiece. So we're going to create those 2 curved lines. Now I need to match this, so I'm going to make a curved line like I did here, like a cloud line. So it's a curved line, bunch of curves. So I'm just going to kind of make those so that I match up to this piece over here. So now I've got my first scoop done for my ice cream. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make more curved lines. You're right, boys and girls, we're going to be making curved lines to create our ice cream scoops here. So I'm going to be creating this line right here, and you notice it's a curved line, kind of like a smiley face but sideways. So I'm going to create a curved line just like that, but I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and I'm going to kind of try to match it, and I'm going to create a curved line. The nice thing is if you don't like what you do, boys and girls, that's why we have erasers on our pencils, so we can erase it and try again, so that I'm trying to make mine match and making those 2 curved lines. Kind of reminds me of the parentheses that we want to put on. So again, I'm going to make another curved line on the side and a curved line over here, and then I'm going to create my cloud line, curved lines. And look, it's coming together. Now I've got 2 ice cream scoops on my cone. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to create a curved line. And then I'm going to try to match it over here and create another curved line. Again, like my parentheses. And then I'm going to create a curved line here. And I'm going to create a curved line on this side. And then I'm going to create my curvy line there, my curved line, like a cloud line. So now I've got my 3 scoops of ice cream, and they are overlapping, so I can't see the top of this scoop because this one's sitting on top of it, and that's what we're trying to create, is creating the depth and showing that there is so now we're going to actually create the cone, and we're just going to make 2 diagonal lines like this so that it comes from my cone. So starting over here, I'm going to make a diagonal line. And starting over here, I'm going to create another diagonal line, and you can either make it a point like this, or you can make it a little bit curved. I have this one a little bit more curved, but this one you can just make a point. So now I'm ready to get started with my painting. All right, boys and girls, so I have a paintbrush, and I have also just a small cup of water, and I have these, which are called temper cakes, and these are a lot like watercolors, because in order to use these, I have to use the water to make them work because they're dry. Now, you can use tempera paint, boys and girls. I don't have these at school. These are going to be used with the students here at school, but those of you who are at home, you can use crayons, you can use markers, you can use watercolors, or you can use tempera paint, or you can use acrylic paint. You can use any one of those things. I know you won't have access to these at home, but you can use other materials. So I'm going to show you using these of what we're trying to accomplish. But like I said, you can use other materials, boys and girls. The watercolors are, like I said, just the same. I'm just using these with the boys and girls here instead of the watercolors. So I'm going to use my paintbrush, and I'm going to get it wet so that, and remember, I'm holding my paintbrush up here kind of like a pencil. I don't want to be holding it all the way back here so I have no control over it. So I'm going to use the paints, and I'm going to use different colors. It doesn't have to look realistic, boys and girls. We can make our artwork look colorful and bright instead of doing just chocolate or just vanilla. So with just like watercolors, that's what I said, most of you are probably going to be using watercolors at home, or if you don't have those, markers and crayons. I'm going to be just brushing on my paint here, but then so I make sure I stay in the line, because I am not cutting these out, boys and girls. I want to make sure that I'm being neat and staying inside the lines when I'm painting. So I'm also going to be creating some light areas and some dark areas, but right now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to try to paint my artwork. And when I want to add and lighten up my paint, I just add a little bit more water to it over here. And on this side, I'm going to come back later and create shadow and light by adding more paint to it once it dries some. So again, I'm going to try to stay in, and I'm going to outline and trace so that I stay inside those lines, boys and girls, and use my paints to create color. So I'm using a color that most of the time we would not see in our artwork, but I'm trying to make a very bright, colorful picture instead of a realistic picture. So have fun painting and creating your artwork. Once we're done painting, I will come back and we will look at creating some darker areas in our artwork. Notice, boys and girls, I have painted my cone yellow, but I don't really want it that color. But when I was looking at my brown, I didn't want my cone to come out this dark of brown. So I wanted to lighten it up a little bit. So one thing that I do, even with watercolors, I can do this, but I lighten it up. I add a little bit more water to it than I want, but I also use the yellow to help kind of lighten it up and not make it so chocolatey brown. And I can lighten it up so that it's a little bit more tan instead of that deep brown. So I'm using just a little bit of brown, but then again, I had that yellow in there, but I didn't want to make my cone so chocolatey brown, so I wanted it to be a little bit lighter. So I used the yellow first, and you can use maybe a little bit of orange if you wanted to, but I just used a little bit of brown. If you have tan, you can use that too, but I was using the yellow just to help kind of lighten it up with colors that I had in my palette. So again, you don't have to do this, boys and girls. I just did not want my cone as dark as the brown that I had in my palette like we do with our watercolor. So you can just add something to it to kind of lighten it up some. So I'm ready to actually let it sit and dry for a minute. And my temper up here is, I need to let this dry, but I'm going to come back in now after it's dried so that I can add some darker areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in with some of that same paint, but I'm going to add more color on top of some of the area that was dry. So I'm just using that same purple that I used in the very beginning, and I'm going to make sure that on one side is darker, on the other side is lighter. So I'm going to pretend that my light is shining on this side, so I'm going to add some over here the light and over here more dark. So that's where I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little bit more paint so that it looks dark, but just on the edge, boys and girls. So I don't want to add a bunch. So I might just come in and add just a little bit on the edge. So again, over where you've already painted, and I'm just kind of following along with the outline of my painting here. And I'm going to do that with every single color that I've put on my paper. I'm going to add that darker area. So I use red, and I'm not using so much water on this either because I want the color to be darker and richer so that it's really creates more of like a shadow on my ice cream. So again, I'm just coming in, and if you need to add like maybe a little bit of black, you can, but black is a very powerful color, and I really don't like to add that in there unless, because it might over dominate and you might add too much. So again, I'm just using more paint in those areas and going back over them so that I can add with very little water some of that color and making it dark on one side, and then on the other side I'm actually going to use because I don't have the white Tempur cakes, I'm going to use some white oil pastel or a white crayon if you have that at home to go over the paint and add like that highlight to it so it looks like it's shiny. So I'm going to add a little bit of brown to my cone so that I have that shadow and dark area. So you can do this and then let it dry, and then we're also going to add our highlight on the other side. So I also have, this is just a white oil pastel, but you can use a white crayon, or if you have white chalk, you could use that, or if white paint, but you can just add kind of, again, you're going around with the shape of the cone and just adding in that white highlight so that I have dark on one side and light on the other. So I'm just adding that highlight. Again, you're following the curved shape. And these are things that you don't have to do, boys and girls. I'm adding them to mine. But now that they're on there, I'm also going to go ahead and let this dry so that next week we're ready to go. Make sure, like I said, that you're trying to stay inside the lines because we're not going to cut these out. Now, if you end up needing to at home, that's fine. But we were going to keep them on the paper that they are and leave them to be put onto our art piece. Bye, boys and girls.